a scion of many worlds. Of course she was gone. For all that she knew, the woman could simply choose to be somewhere else, and was. There was a word for that, but it wouldn't come to her for hours, if not days. It's just the way things work. She wants the money. She wants it so badly. Her family is bleeding money like a woman stabbed. But every big grab she's made to try and make some profit for her family failed. Even her mother was able to eke out small profits. Her grandmother was able to build the fortune, but it was her great-grandmother that truly built it. Would there be anything left by the time her daughter inherited? Or would she be forced to sell the family home for bread on the table? As she does whenever she's desperate for direction, she pulls out the master ledger. Her great-grandmother, Edwina Shimmer, had started it, and her portion of the book with its yearly expenses and profits was like a comforting bath. The wisdom within it was beyond her ability to understand, but seeing the end number, always a profit. A profit in the thousands upon thousands of gold ingots. Then the story became less cheery. Deficits began to show up when the book had passed from Edwina to Amelia. The numbers for the profits was smaller as well. Sometimes it struggled to reach the hundreds and never touched the thousands again. It was already bad as it reached her mother Shelia's records. The profits were still more common than the deficits, but only just, and the profits were rarely breaking 100. Then her own. Her hand shakes with the urge to rip the next few pages out entirely. Her unending failures. The moment Clara's name showed up on the page, it went from depressing to disturbing. The good years had her barely getting a handful of coins added to the rapidly emptying coffers. Clara simply isn't worthy. She slams the tome shut before more tears of disappointment and frustration warp the pages of the valuable paper. Hot and heavy, the self-loathing and hatred comes back, and she steps away from everything before she breaks something else. She's just not good enough. No matter what friends she makes, no matter how much money she saves, no matter what deals or contracts or agreements she makes, it's always the same. Failure, loss, and disappointment. Her head throbs as she tries to figure out how again. It always hurts to try and find the answer, but not trying just makes things fail. But she's not good enough. She has all of her great-grandmothers, grandmothers, and mother's notes, but she just can't put it together. To make matters worse, trying too hard would get her dizzy if it didn't cause a headache. She will never admit it, not even under hot pokers or on a wheel, but there's something wrong with her and she knows it. She can only pray to the divine light that her daughter is spared from this. She can only hope and pray. But from what she'd seen of her own mother's journal, prayers had a tendency to go unanswered, and Clara flinches as she's forced away from thinking too hard again. She takes a deep breath and tries to center herself as she bends over. How pitiable is a woman forced to find a way to cry without smudging her makeup. The heirs of nobility has a price, and she can't afford to pay more than the barest minimum for the proper paints. There is none to spare. I need help. Someone. Anyone. She mutters to herself as she holds the sides of her head, taking care not to mess up the wig she wears. She can't afford any such. The rattling of metal causes her to gasp and right herself. The pain is bad. The pain of humiliation would be far worse. The voice of the Sisterhood of Slayers is back, and on her desk is a small fortune, her latest failed venture, returned, a trap, a deadly, dangerous trap. There's no way out of this that won't bleed the Shimmer coffers. She can feel the judging gaze of the voice. Don't, Clara spits out. I don't need your pity. It's not pity, the voice says. Then what is it? Sympathy. I've seen that reaction before. Oh? Been keeping a close eye on me, have you? Clara hopes it's her. The idea of a professional killer seeing her own daughter's fits sends a chill down her spine. You? No. My own daughter? Yes, the voice says, and Clara's thought process stops so suddenly she can almost hear it crash against a solid wall. Oh, she doesn't have it as bad, though, the voice says, walking up close and grabbing her by the chin. She can see past the mask and see tiny hints of the burning hair of a fireborn and little else. Which means that if I can find a way for you to be healed of this, my own child will be all but guaranteed a better life. And Mara too, Clara says, and the voice nods. So I think that's what you get out of it. But do you have a plan? I might. I need to speak with a great number of people, however, provided nothing stupid happens. Expect me tonight, after dinner, the voice says before reaching into a pouch and pulling out a small round object. Then just as Claire is about to ask about the thing, it explodes and fills the room with smoke. She doesn't hear the voice leave, mostly because she's too busy trying to make sure nothing is damaged by the smoke. After a couple of blocks, Sheena slows down to a more comfortable pace. That lovely reminder that the midwife who christened her had also done a lot of work for the Shimmer family ringing clear in her head. Some girls were just like that. They liked their patterns in the strangest of places. She idly wonders how Lady Shimmer would react to knowing that Sheena's daughter shared her grandmother's name. It doesn't matter, Amelia Scorchfinger is very different from Amelia Shimmer. And thinking of Scorchfingers, this one has places to be and people to meet. The building she's heading towards is in the trade district. The familiar clang of hammers on metal, the sounds of working songs, and the nose-wrinkling smell of tanning leather and freshly mixed or applied dyes gives the whole area a very unique feel to it. It's one of the livelier parts of the city with everything moving around. There's a newer building where a journeywoman from the Aridus Valley is teaching how to create communicators and how to use axiom to refine metals and other materials pure enough to actually use them. It's a popular one, but it does have a rival in the nearby brewery trying newly taught techniques and a glassmaker's workshop that has something called spectacles on offer. From what Sheena can tell, they're designed to correct the poor vision that her own family line had thankfully dodged, but many others were afflicted with. Behind a weaver's shop, she slips into a doorway into the rear of the building and then heads down a flight of stairs. The lantern-lit room is partially filled with a sweet-smelling smoke as she arrives to find 3 other women that she has been blessed to consider friends. "Sheena, it's not like you to be last in. Interesting day?" Baruni exclaims, waving around her smoking pipe a bit. The Foza woman was unusually brawny, very gregarious, and was not what you thought of when you thought of the local entertainers. But it made a lot more sense when you learned that she worked her way up from a foreign strong woman and bouncer to the head of the show. Anyone that tried to lean on the working girls quickly found a woman nearly twice their size who could shout down a castle wall leaning back. Something like that. "How are you girls holding up?" Sheena asks. "Could be better. With all the increased paranoia from the big fluttery one, there are guards everywhere, so it's harder to slip into windows. Although I get the sense I'm preaching to the choir there," Arlene Breeze says as she takes a sip of her glass of wine, one that is very pointedly not for sale in most shops. The heir Arumenta was not the kind of woman who bothered with things like what was for sale and what wasn't. It had taken her years to smarten up enough to be a leader, and only really got there when Garlia had gone rogue from Shayna's own organization and had become an independent thief. Just keeping up with Shayna's old apprentice had taught the woman a world of responsibility, which is why Shayna wasn't anywhere near as upset about Garlia leaving as the rest of the family was. But it does bring in the question as to why we've all been called here. Let's not mince words. What's going on, Shayna? The last member of the group's Sawar Shroud says with a roll of her shoulders. An impoverished noble, only her elder sister held the title. Technically, even with the moth restoring the nobility of the dark Arumenta, hadn't fully reversed her family's situation, so she was still plying her trade as a sellsword and professional scrapper. The woman was an absolute nightmare to fight, as she had figured out a trick to outright ignore armor of any kind. You were better off fighting her naked. Shortly after he first showed up in the city, my sisterhood received a big bounty for the death of the moth, Sheena states, and everyone goes stiff. Have you? He's alive. We've been forced to return the money as the contract is not completable. Really? Suar asks, and Sheena brings out the small case with the tuft of fur. Baruni grabs it first and opens it with a subconscious flourish. What the? Something's wrong with this fur. Primal Urthani, I'm told. From what I understand, it's like comparing a Nagasha to the Serpent Empress. That's what he is to the Urthani. But where she can shed her skin along with any injury or age, he simply can't be hurt. We've broken weapons over that tuft, and even our hottest fire couldn't singe it. Sheena explains, and Suar holds out her hand and is given the fur. She drops it onto the table and in a single motion draws an axe and drives it into the Urthani fur. There's a yelp of shock from the startled woman as the hand axe is jolted badly in her grip as it ignores the table but bounces clean off the fur. The woman staggers and then regains herself before swinging again. This time the axe is embedded into the table with the fur, but as she pulls the axe out, the tuft pops out of the hole, uncut and undamaged. Well, that's not normal. Suar notes in a vaguely stunned tone. She shakes out her arm after she sheathes the axe again. And kind of painful. Thank you for the performance. I couldn't have done better myself. Baruni notes in a slightly awed tone. Well, that's a hell of a reason to not kill someone. Even solid iron would have been at least scratched by that, Arlene says after a moment. She takes a sip of her wine before holding it out to the table. Suar takes the bottle and takes a swig of the drink. But you wouldn't have called us here for just that. At most, you would have sent a letter with the fur and telling us to pass it along so we can all test it. So, what else is going on? Does it have anything to do with that non-elemental giant you were spotted with? Baruni asks, before taking a puff of her pipe. That's the moth's brother, a male version of a sister. A battle brother, was it? A battle brother, then? I'm told the situation is weirder than that. But apparently the moth is exhausted, still unkillable despite it, and so his brother has come to try and get my and my sisters to stop trying to kill him without him needed to kill us all. Really? Did he use those words exactly? It is he, right? It is, and not those words exactly. But the meaning behind his meeting was clear. He'd rather have me and mine alive and on his side than as corpses, but he'll kill us if we don't stop. So, do you need to hide, or he's also willing to pay and has paid quite well? Then what is this about? Arlene asks. You're not one to waste time. Do you want in? Sheena asks, and there's another pause. You're signing up with the giants and the people with the sky ships? Even if it doesn't last, we're going to get what we can while the getting's good. So the question is, do you girls want a piece of that? Sheena asks, and the smiles around the table tell her all she needs to know.